Developed by Supermassive Games, the Quarry released June 10th, 2022. These interactive horror games aren't for everybody. They are basically a movie, but you're steering the ship. Supermassive's previous game, Until Dawn, is a PlayStation 4 classic, but the Quarry? This is a monster of its own. Unlike Until Dawn, the Quarry has so many different paths, which is great for replay value. Until Dawn's paths, for the most part, all end up in the same area. You may have killed a few off, but the story basically stays the same. The Quarry has 9 playable characters, and each character has 10 to 12 different ways to possibly die. According to Will Bales, the director of Supermassive Games, the Quarry has 186 different endings. That is insane. I mentioned 9 playable characters. Let me go through them without potentially spoiling anything. Laura is by far my favorite. I don't know why, but my priority in the Quarry was keeping her alive over everyone else. She isn't a follower, she's a leader, and I loved her character. Max is her boyfriend, and you only play as him once, maybe twice, but I dig his sense of humor. Emma is annoying, and she's the pretty popular type and comes across as the pot stirrer. Jacob is the immature frat boy type. I had mixed feelings for his character throughout the game. However, by the end, I liked Jacob. He can't let go of his summer fling with Emma, and she reminds him constantly. Caitlin is very unlikable early on. Her sarcastic, witty attitude creates a personality that doesn't personally sit well with me. However, as the game moves along, situations get rough, and I think the real Caitlin shows, and I prefer that version. Ryan I wasn't sure about. The dude seems quite weird in the beginning, but just another character that becomes more and more likable as you play. He also has a sarcastic personality from time to time, but it comes across as playful, where Caitlin's is just not. Dylan has a great sense of humor and reliable in some of the most tense moments of the game. Abigail was probably my second favorite. She is that backward, shy, somewhat quiet kind of girl. And Nick, the guy athlete type who comes off a bit awkward and shy. He and Abigail have feelings for one another, but both struggle to get their feelings out in the open. Promotion for The Quarry came across as an 80s slasher horror movie. Even the box art for the game points in that direction. If you watch the official announced trailer, not a lot is given, which is great because some movies and games give away too much in their trailers. I'm not going to get into spoilers because the game is still new, but I do at least want to set up the events of the game. In the opening cutscene, Laura and her boyfriend Max are driving to Hackett's Quarry, a summer camp where they have been hired as camp counselors. They crash into the woods after swerving off-road. The county sheriff helps pull them back to the main road and out of the dark, creepy, muddy woods. He seems a bit suspicious, but it's too early to tell. They explain that they wanted to arrive early to Hackett's Quarry, but the sheriff demanded that they stay at a nearby hotel for the night. After the awkward encounter, the couple decide to drive to the camp anyways. Once arriving, they are attacked by some kind of creature in the basement. It doesn't look good for Max, and Laura gets sedated by the sheriff that shows up in the nick of time. Angry that they didn't listen, the sheriff shoots to scare off the creature. Fast forward 2 months later, summer camp has come to an end. Here is where we meet the rest of the counselors. Max and Laura were no-call no-shows all summer, so that remains a mystery. The camp owner, Chris Hackett, played by David Arquette, seems very stressed about everyone leaving the camp on time. Jacob, who is trying to reignite his summer fling with Emma, decides to sabotage the vehicle so that they all can stay one last night. Chris Hackett, in a panic, tells them all to stay inside the lodge for the night, and they'll figure things out in the morning. Well, of course, these young camp counselors aren't going to listen. Not long into the night, all hell breaks loose. And now that's where I'm going to leave the story. I would have liked to see some more of David Arquette. By the promotion, it seemed as if he would play a much bigger role. And I mean, he does to a point, but his screen time is limited. The language was a bit much for my liking. I usually say I don't mind it if it makes sense, but to use profanity in every single sentence, is a bit much. I love that they played off nostalgia with the VHS 80s vibe, but the game takes place in current times. I think it would have made more sense if the timeline was placed in the 80s. When the story first starts to unfold, I wasn't too sure, but the deeper the story went, the more I got invested. There was even a situation in the game where my jaw dropped. If you like games like Little Hope and Until Dawn, this is for you. Decisions need to be made and quick-time events are present. Choose your own adventure books and video games have always been favorites of mine. My complaints are really just nitpicking, honestly. Here's an example. Why in the world would you include a 20-minute credit scene that cannot be skipped? That's brutal, man. I love the different outcomes, and my first playthrough was not perfect, but I was happy with it. Out of all the endings, unfortunately, they don't show what happens to the remaining survivors after this horrific night. They do leave you with a scene showing who did survive and who didn't to the tune of Daydream Believer by the Monkees, which was a nice touch if you ask me. The Quarry has many very good reviews, and I recommend it as well. Whether it's the 80s or the 2020s, one thing certainly hasn't changed, and that is summer camp just isn't a good idea.